holidays, everybody. Greetings. Welcome to another episode of 1 Degree of Scandalous with Cato Kalin and Tom Zenner.
Thank God there's no mistletoe here, Tom. You're scaring me with that new coat of yours. No kissing, please.
I wanted to have a little bit of a holiday vibe here. This is kind of like a piece of ivy or
it
something, right?
That or an elf. I like it.
Could be.
I like it.
Could be. Yeah, we're taping this just a few days before Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody watching and listening right now. By the way, hey, we've had a great year. We want to have an even better 2023. So download and subscribe. Write us a review. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. But give us a little 5-star review. Send us some comments and make sure you subscribe and share with everybody because we got a great show today.
Yes, that 5-star review you're giving to Uber, give it to us.
Don't you feel afraid not to give your driver a 5-star review on Uber?
Yeah,
like somehow it's going to come back and haunt you.
Yes.
You know, or he knows where you live. That's the problem,
plus
right?
Plus they review you.
I always feel, exactly. That's the thing. No matter what they do, they get a 5 from me.
When you talk about our guest coming up, I got really excited. I'm going to let you do the intro because this is just phenomenal.
Yeah. And, Cato, I was thinking the other day, I'd love to talk about a scandal that has something to do with the holidays.
Right.
Right. Usually, the holidays is a downtime. It's fun, it's festive, you're with families, but there was one huge scandal.
On Christmas.
Right at Christmas time. It was 26 years ago, and everybody's going to remember it, of course, and we have the number one authority, probably one of the top authorities in the entire country to talk about this, and it still is intriguing, it's interesting, it's mortifying, it's sad, it's infuriating, but of course we're talking about JonBenet Ramsey and her very, very tragic death. She was murdered in 1996 when she was 6 years old, this beautiful little girl.
Still today, no one has been caught for that crime.
And we have Paula Woodward joining us now, and she's an investigative reporter from Denver. No one has covered this story with more fervor, with more excellence. She's been on it for, a quarter century. Paula, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, thanks so much. Good to see you both.
Has this become part of your life? I mean, you were working in television news, Channel 9 in Denver. Denver's a great TV market, Cato, for news. Very, very competitive, very high level, incredible videographers, good storytellers. You're an investigative reporter when this thing happened, and has it taken over your life?
I don't think it's taken over my life, but it certainly is now a substantial part of my life. I was on vacation like everybody else in the time period between Christmas and New Year's. And I was called in on vacation and told a child had been murdered in Boulder. It's like in Boulder, nobody ever gets murdered in Boulder, especially a child. I mean, Boulder does not even have a homicide department. And so I was called in off vacation, worked on that Friday. Her body had been discovered on Thursday and was immersed in it by Monday. And by Monday, the world knew about JonBenet Ramsey. The videos of her being in child beauty contests, pageants, were fascinating to people. People disapproved of it, but at the same time, it's like a train wreck. They could not stay away. It's almost like she never died. Well, because for 30 days and nights on ABC, CBS, and NBC, every night, there were beauty pageant videos. The photographers who took them sold them to the networks. It was a very lucrative business. It was very much like the O.J. Simpson case, where everybody was, Cato, I know you're very familiar with that, but it was where everybody wanted to make money off it.
Sure, and everybody had their appetite whetted with the O.J. situation. That was 24/7 for 2 years, year and a half. That ended, and this filled the gap in 1996.
Right, and everybody wanted to be associated with somehow. And with the holidays coming up again, I think JonBenet's body was discovered on the day after Christmas, if I'm correct. Do you see that everything is happening every holiday season, that you get more calls, people want to talk to Paula? Do you find that happens every year for you?
Cato, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. But I'm finding out that every holiday, people want to talk about the case. And it's very tragic. What's really tragic about it, I'll just get right to it.
Yeah.
My bias is I'm very pro law enforcement. Very pro law enforcement. I believe in cops. I believe in law enforcement. I believe that they have a very difficult job to do, and I respect and admire them for that. However, there are exceptions to every career field. And in this case, in Boulder, and Cato, again, you can address this, but in Boulder, you had people who had no homicide experience when other departments like Denver, when it became such a mess right away, other departments in Denver said, hey, we'll give you whatever you need. We'll give you our homicide detectives. who had covered hundreds of homicides. And police said, "What for? We don't need any help."
Arrogance.
Yeah.
Tom Lang would have had this probably solved in a week. Cato was around the greatest detectives on the planet, probably. LAPD homicide, and then,
Well, 150 detectives were called just for that case. Do you know that?
for the OJ.
Yeah, and then but they had that's
highly trained and experienced.
Yeah.
They deal with murders every day, every week. Paula, you mentioned something off the top. By the way, I want to mention this. So Paula's written 2 books, Cato.
Right.
Unsolved, the JonBenet Ramsey murder 25 years later, and We Have Your Daughter. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. The ransom note, the parents being suspects, the brother. Cato's got an unbelievable backstory regarding what happened with the brother and with CBS. It kind of ties in with Cato here a little bit. We'll get to that in a second. But and both your books are bestsellers. You've had an amazing career, a writing career. But when you said right off the top, small town cops, it reminded me of what's going on in Idaho right now. And these people are just incapable of doing it, and they don't have the guts to bring in the help. So these crime scenes get trampled, and all the evidence is gone, and you got no chance of solving these things.
Well, Tom, Idaho did bring in people. The question is whether or not it was too late. The question is whether or not the crime scene by then had been destroyed, because you had people already in there before the police got there. The police got there. How soon did they call in the crime scene? The competent people, the FBI. And then you have a situation where you can't have one of the people in Idaho with the police department in charge of the case. You have to have the outsiders in charge. In Boulder, Colorado, on the JonBenet case, they said, "We don't want any help, and we're in charge of the case." And 26 years later, guess what, folks? In spite of trying to hang the Ramsey family, they lied, they committed crimes.
Wow.
And 26 years later, one of the lead people on the case has been demoted to overnight shift on patrol after being in charge of investigations. He is no longer allowed to handle investigations, including JonBenet Ramsey's case. And the reason is because he and his detectives in investigations did not investigate certain cases. And the cases that they did investigate, they only did halfway. They never completed a case over like a 3 or 4 year period of time. Well, guess what? How many tips came in on the Ramsey case when this guy who was on the case from the first day, all these tips are coming in, and he's probably not investigating those either. Why would he change?
They just weren't equipped. They just didn't know what they were doing. They were in over their head. It was amateur hour, but yet their pride or whatever it was wouldn't allow them to have the help that they needed. The FBI is usually pretty good at these types of things too. You could make a call, bring them in.
It's still an open case to this day, right? There's someone's working on it. I mean, they have cold cases all the time that I don't know who works on it right now. You probably have done more work on it than possibly these detectives of chasing, possible clues. And I'm sure people, you being a reporter and being on TV all the time, people are probably going directly to you going, "Hey, I have an idea." I know that because people would come up to me and always go, "I have a theory." So you must have had people come up to you constantly. "Paula, I've got this theory." You must have been, am I right?
For sure.
Yeah, Cato, I think that your and my experiences are very similar in terms of who came up to us with what, dealing with incompetence, dealing with confidence, and the frustration of it all.
Paulo, the only difference is you spent a lot less time at the Playboy Mansion than Cato.
That's right.
Oh, come on. Let me lighten it up a little bit. You know what? This is just a tragic thing. It was such, like Cato and the OJ thing, that basically invented reality television.
Right.
And then this thing picked up right in its wake. Let's go back to it. It's 1996. It's Christmas weekend. The family had moved there. He was a big time John, or the dad, I forgot his first name.
John Ramsey, yeah.
Yeah, but he was, a successful businessman. And then what happened was, and Paula, you fill in the blanks, but I'm going to do this the best I can. Patty Ramsey found a ransom note, and it was addressed to John, right? Basically a handwritten letter with a lot of exclamation points speaking to John with a ransom dollar amount that was similar to the Christmas bonus or the year-end bonus that he received that year. So there's all these crazy things, and it sounded like foreign terrorists, like from Die Hard, the way they wrote that letter. It was just bizarre, right? Everything about it was bizarre. They did
$118,000, right?
$118,000. They did all kinds of handwriting analysis, and the parents were the suspects, the prime suspects. So kind of pick it up from where I just set that up and what I missed.
the whoever's in the house where a murder happens is always the first suspect. And so the parents were. But the problem was there wasn't much evidence against them. And I got copies of the police reports. Those were leaked to me when I started to write my book. And I found all these police reports talking to all sorts of people about the Ramseys. And one of the detectives was quoted as saying in one of his reports, and this was a detective who was just a diehard believer that the Ramseys killed their daughter. And he said, this case is very frustrating. All that we're getting about the Ramseys is that they're Christian people who help others. And it's very frustrating to try to figure out how they killed their daughter. I mean,
like it's a foregone conclusion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Guilty until proven innocent. Did you ever get a vibe being around the parents? You know, you could tell creepy people. You could tell people that are lying. You got this internal instinct. Did you get a weird vibe from them, or did you think that they were getting railroaded?
You know what? I never did decide, and I never have. I don't know who killed JonBenet Ramsey. I can tell you that the evidence does not lead to the parents. I can tell you that, in my opinion, the parents were very decent people. She died of cancer in 2006.
Patsy.
And he's still living. And he's really one of the most decent, thoughtful people I know. And then you have, on the other hand, these police officers who worked on the investigation. One of them, a citizen review panel, recommended that he be fired. Instead, he was, in essence, fired from his job on investigations and put on overnight patrol, which is like the worst job that you can get. And there he is.
Yeah, you can't do worse than that, right? I mean, you have no respect amongst your coworkers.
Detective, he went down to overnight patrol. It's then he's after that. It's probably just parking tickets. So it's not a good thing to have this guy who was your lead detective.
Yeah. I mean, look, as soon as they started pointing at the parents, they're losing track of what other suspects there could be. But you know, no one really jumped out. You know, I read the ransom note recently, and you kind of get the vibe that maybe there was a connection with his company. There was just some similarities there.
We don't know that nobody jumped out, because immediately the police were leaking lies to the media, who was very gullible at that time, and printing those without doing a double check on them, two sources. And so the first week was lies designed to, like, one was John Ramsey flew his jet airplane to his daughter's funeral in Atlanta, flew the family. I mean, you think, well, how can he have the composure to fly his jet to Atlanta to his daughter's funeral? You can't do that. And by the end of the week, there wasn't anybody who didn't think that the Ramseys weren't guilty. And the police just continued to lie. Who knows how well they investigated all of these purported
They should be in
suspects.
jail. Sorry, those cops should be arrested. For what they did.
Well, what they did, but also, when the story first came out, you watch certain things on TV, and obviously you become detective in your head. And I thought maybe the parents did do it because I hear stories from the news, so I make an opinion. But then I saw a special on a 60 Minutes in Australia version, which they show the house. They show that you can get into the basement easily by a window well in the ground. Someone could have snuck in. They show how easy it was. And I always wondered why John Ramsey took the body from downstairs upstairs to the room. And I said, don't you? I mean, I think it's because I watched so many forensic files, never touch anything. Just call 911, have the detectives, because that's where the clues are. So I always wondered, why would you take the body? And that doesn't mean he's guilty, but I'm saying, why?
Cato, do you have children?
Yes.
All right. So I have to say this. If you were searching for your child that you thought had been kidnapped, and you were in the basement of a mansion, and in this the room was an old coal storage.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So it was just cement. And you go in that room and you see a child's body. What are you going to do? Go, hey, help, help? Or are you going to pick up the child and hope that she's still alive and run for help? I totally get that. I totally understand that.
It's good to hear that viewpoint. Yeah.
I see what you're saying, Paula.
Yeah,
I mean, would those wounds have been? No, she was strangled and blunt force to the head too, right? So there would be some graphic injuries.
She was hit so hard in the head that it caved in her skull and left an 8-inch crack in her skull. And then she was strangled with a garrote. Who the heck knows how to make a garrote.
I don't even know what a garrote is. What is a garrote?
I don't know what that is either. Is that
I mean, a garrote is used in war. A garrote is used in assassinations. You have to study a garrote to know how to use one.
See, that's what I said.
And-
That letter sounded like it was from terrorists.
Yeah.
Garrotes?
So what is it again?
It's like some special rope knot.
Oh, it's
thing.
a knot. It's
Yeah.
okay.
But Kato, you brought up a good point. You were talking about the entry through the basement window.
Yeah.
Yet when that was brought up, first Boulder Police said, no, it's too small. A child could not get through there. So one of the detectives brought in from the outside, showed how he could, and he videotaped it all, showed how he could get in the window well and go in the window and jump into the basement.
Right.
Then they said, okay, we'll give you that, but there are spider webs in that window well, and those spider webs are not disturbed. Well, it turns out that the type of spider that was in this window well could weave a web in half a day. So that was not relevant. I mean, there were all these roadblocks being put in. The stun gun. A stun gun was used, and we're going to come out with that information very shortly from a company who claims that their stun gun left the marks on her. They fit what that company has. And so the Boulder Police Department never checked with any stun gun companies. I've talked to all of them. Never checked with any of them to see if possibly those were stun gun marks. I mean, it just, they not only lied about the Ramseys, they put up obstacles in the way of the Ramseys being perceived or possibly innocent. So how far did that extend into their investigation? They say, well, we've got thousands of tips that we've checked out. Really? I mean, really?
Yeah, prove it. Why would you believe anything they say after they lied in the very first week? The other thing, how could you be so damn incompetent as a cop?
Well,
I mean, don't you have some pride that kicks in and think, hey, maybe this is a little over my head? The most important thing is we find the killer, the murderer of this poor little child. You know, all they were thinking about was their egos. Sick.
This child was tortured and murdered. I mean, this garrote was really savage.
I mean, God, we have to. It's unfathomable that we can't get to the bottom of this. You know, you mentioned the parents, and you know when all the TV stations and the networks were playing the pageant video, right? And it's odd. It's uncomfortable as if you're a parent. You don't really think of doing that with your 6-year-old. So then you almost start believing that the parents are a little. You know, they planted that seed that it could be the parents because look at makeup, lipstick, tiaras, traveling, all this money for the gowns and doing it. Does a 6-year-old really make that decision to want to do that? So it's easy to kind of almost think that they may have had something to do with it, even though the way you described she was killed. What kind of parent could do that? It almost be impossible.
Also, Tom and Paula, it's the repetition. You see it over and over. You think there's a beauty pageant every day, and that was just played over and over. So everybody thought she's in another pageant. It's another pageant, or it's probably the same pageant played over and over. And Paula, you know, being in the news, and repetition makes people believe certain things, and they keep repeating it and repeating it. And so, that, like Tom, you said, you start thinking, boy, these parents are just taking this daughter as a 6-year-old and dressing her as an adult.
Ultimately, what came through in this for everybody, I can't tell you how chaotic and fervent everyone was, but what came through was these are bad parents. They put their daughter in beauty pageants, child beauty pageants. We don't do that. Why would they do that? They must be bad parents.
And then you got 19 networks and TV stations and newspapers echoing the same thing constantly. It's like you're getting brainwashed.
And I imagine
around the world, guys, around the world, people from Japan, from Australia, from Britain, from France, from Germany, all were coming into this little town of Boulder, not that little, but isolated town of Boulder.
College town, small. Yeah. It's not that big.
And I believe the Ramseys probably thought it probably got to a boiling point, and they said, we've got to go on TV themselves. So they go on a Dr. Phil or whatever show.
Was it Connie Chung? I can't remember. They did a big interview.
A few, but they had to go out and show their side and they're human, that they're just human people, this quality that they have. Like you said, they're good people, because so many times you've got to, at one point you got to defend yourself. And I felt that way sometimes with me. I'm like, hey, I'm just this guy from Wisconsin. Sure. I'm a fun person. I was the prom king, man. I'm a good guy.
Well, you get thrust into a nightmare. That's what happens.
You have to prove that, hey, don't don't believe everything you see. My whole life was a soundbite.
Guys, let's talk about the ransom note, because you had the child beauty pageants. First, you had the child beauty pageants. You had wealth, and wealth always attracts suspicion and fascination. And then you have this crazy ransom note, 2.5 pages long. If you're going to write a ransom note, are you going to write for 2.5 pages? No, aren't you going to write like 3 sentences?
Yeah. Beforehand, Kato, was written on paper they got in the house. I mean, they wrote it on the site.
That's right. But let me mention something else to you. It was written on a tablet, and there were probably 4 other tablets exactly like it that they kept in the kitchen. So is it reasonable, and I don't know the answer to this, I'll ask you both, is it reasonable to assume that they never set their alarm because it was a very invasive alarm and they had kids running in and out, their children were very popular and had lots of little friends, their doors weren't all locked, their windows weren't all locked. And I know that because I went through and counted all the windows that opened to the outside, and there were like 78 that opened to the outside. I mean, you're not going to check those every night. Yeah. You should check your doors, but they didn't.
So were the parents home? Were the family home when she was murdered?
Yes.
They were home.
They were home. Yes. They had come home from a Christmas night party and carried her up to bed, and they were asleep.
So then what happened? So how did JonBenet get from upstairs downstairs into the basement?
Wait. I need to tell you something on the ransom note. Is it, and I want to ask you both this, is it reasonable to assume when you have 4 or 5 tablets exactly the same that the killer, who may have been in and out of the house all summer long through until Christmas, is it reasonable to assume that he took it home? Is it reasonable to assume that it was premeditated? Is it reasonable to assume that there are quotes from 5 different kidnapping type movies like Dirty Harry, like Ransom, and other phrases that are used throughout the note, which is an odd, strange note, where he took the tablet home and wrote the note and brought it back in, and nobody was the wiser because there were all these other tablets.
Yes, it's reasonable. So who was the person that was in and out of the house through the summer? And up, we don't know? A worker?
They don't know. They think, in retrospect, detectives who worked on it think that it's very possible that someone, I mean, this house is huge. It's got crawl spaces downstairs, and you could be in the house and nobody would know.
Okay, so what about the angle, Paula, that there were 38 registered sex offenders that lived within a 2-mile radius? Is that true? Was that Creepyville?
You know, I know that there are registered sex offenders in Boulder at the time. I don't have the details on how many and how close they were to their home. But I would go back again to, yes, there were several. I don't know how many. How well were they interviewed by police who had the bias that the family did it?
So, Paula, since you've written 2 books, you form an opinion. What on this show is your opinion of what happened? Do you have someone in mind that you think is the murderer?
I don't know who did it, Cato. I always concentrated on the evidence and was fortunate when I was working on the books, or on the first book, to have gotten a summary of the murder book, on the case. Mm-hmm. And it was summaries of all the police reports, and it was invaluable. And that's where I figured out, hey, these guys are lying. They're leaking and lying because the evidence is showing a totally different direction away from the family than that the family did it. And my big thing on it right now is there's a minute amount of DNA left that Boulder police refuse to do anything about when they could do genealogy testing. Well, There's also a whole bunch of crime scene items that have never been tested for DNA. So there's a petition out there to have the governor take over the case. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I remember when the governor kind of got after the Ramseys, not that long after. He was chastising them publicly and whatnot. Let's talk about the son. Let's talk about JonBenet's brother.
Burke, I believe. Burke.
Yeah, 9 years older.
And you met him also?
No, he's 9 years old.
Oh, he was 9 years old at the time, so 3 years older than JonBenet.
And
And
he weighed 65 pounds. I
okay.
got that from his medical record.
65 pounds. That's not very big. Okay.
No.
But I will tell you this 5, 6, 7 years ago, CBS runs this big 2-night special basically saying he did this. How they cleared this with their legal department, I don't know. But they aired it. They sued. The Ramsey sued. They won. They won big. They asked for a couple $100 million, and they were happy with whatever they got. But how? I don't remember the details of the CBS special, but what was the leaps that they were taking to say that the brother did it?
I think I
They
believe
had people, it's the old, let's see how much money we can make off this case. So they had people, they had former detectives who had worked on the case for a very short amount of time, who said, hey, I'll help you out on this. And they're the ones who formulated, it's Burke, here's why it's Burke, and it wasn't true. He wasn't. They even had a portion where they had a child his age grab an object and hit a skull. I mean, it was disgusting and
Right.
fascinating. Got big ratings.
Yeah, I believe they had a forensic scientist that made the claim. I don't know the name, so I'm not going to get into a lawsuit in our show, but I think that's what happened with that. And like you said, I at the time was selling a show, Paula, and it was getting to the final phase. And then that show came out.
Well, CBS was going to buy it, weren't they?
Yeah, and what happened was lawsuit happened. Lawsuit happened. When the lawsuit happened, everything gets shut down. So, you know.
Right. Well, it had something to do with it. I'm not buying your show.
And by the way, Paul, as you know, crime does pay because everything from podcasts to TV shows, everybody is looking for crime to be on air. Everybody's looking for crime because people want to play detective. I know from experience, and you know from experience, people want to play detective. Now, of all the police and the detectives that you met in Boulder, they saw you, and it was kind of a clown show, so they probably had an opinion about you. Did you ever get into any verbal, you guys aren't doing your job, did you ever say anything directly to their face?
It wasn't until the 20-year anniversary, Cato, and I know that you've been the object of a lot of hate. It wasn't until the 20-year anniversary when probably 20 books came out, but mine was probably the only investigated one because that's what I do for a living. I do investigative. And I was able to show the police lies. I was able to show the evidence pointing to someone other than the Ramseys. And by the 25th anniversary, for the first time, the pressure was off of people like me for sticking up for the Ramseys. And I wasn't sticking up for the Ramseys. I was giving the Ramseys a fair shake. They deserved it. Their story needed to be told. I was criticized because I interviewed them. I was like, what? You have to interview them. Yeah. Anybody in the right mind is going to try as hard as they can to get an interview with the Ramseys.
Exactly.
I was one of a few people who was able to. As a result, I was criticized, accused of being friends with them, you know, the whole gamut for 20 years. But the 25th year, the whole story has changed. It's no longer a story about did the Ramseys do it, which is what it was by the 20th anniversary. The story is now who did it? How goofed up was that investigation? How criminal was the behavior of the officers investigating? And then bingo, up steps this police officer who's been on it for 26 years, and he's accused of not investigating the cases in his own department and not supervising them. And we say, gee, what did he do on the Ramsey case? Mm-hmm. Same darn thing.
Yeah. Other than that, he was a great cop. He was really good.
Yeah.
Really thorough. Yeah. Okay, so you don't know who did it. You don't even have an opinion.
I don't.
It's kind of hard to speculate that. Let me ask you this. Do you think we'll ever know? Do you think an arrest will ever be made? Has there been any sort of pattern with other killings that we've seen, you know, in the past quarter century? Or is this person getting away scot-free?
There's no pattern of killings. However, I do believe an arrest can be made. It cannot be made if the case stays with the Boulder Police Department. Excuse me. And that's why that petition, and you can find it by going online, JonBenet for Justice, is out there asking the governor to take over the DNA portion of this.
Yeah.
The only way that anything will move forward is if it's tested for genealogy, DNA. And you both know how many cold cases have been solved that way. That's the only way that anything will happen in terms of finding the killer or killers.
Right.
It could be killers. And it's not going to happen if Boulder Police is in charge of it. They just won't do it. and the Boulder District Attorney won't make them do it. It's got to be the governor.
Yeah, it will be solved, in my opinion, only because I watch a lot of those forensic files, and I see them going back into cases from 35 years ago, and I see the advancement of DNA, and I just think it has to be. It'll be solved. I don't know when, but I think it will be solved in our lifetime.
Yeah, you know what? Does it take a few minutes to just trample a crime scene, doesn't it? And then stuff's never be able to be used again.
You know, I find really interesting, Paula, that the interview, you say that they were at a Christmas party. I just wonder what everybody's reaction was, if anything ever happened at the Christmas party, and all the interviews that must have been done at the Christmas party, what time they got in. Because I know on a crime scene, or any kind of crime, you go to what was the last thing done, of the what was the mood, how were the parents, was JonBenet at the party, and what was that like at the party? So I don't know if you even interviewed people from that party. Investigate that, because I think that's really important. It's what leads up to something.
The Christmas party was the day of Christmas. It was Christmas. It was kind of like a Christmas dinner, but it was for children and their parents. The family whose house they went to had children who were friends of JonBenet and Burke. And so there were other children there. And basically it was a kind of a quick get together at the end of Christmas Day. The kids were all tired. They got together, they had supper, there were other families there, and then they all went to their respective homes.
Right.
And when they got home, JonBenet was asleep. Her dad carried her up, put her on the bed. Her mom came in and changed her clothes, and she never woke up, and tucked her into bed. Patsy then went upstairs to get ready for bed, and John played with Burke a little while, and then he went to bed, and he put Burke to bed. And John believes the killer was in the house. I think that that's a reasonable assumption. And they went to bed. They were on the third floor. JonBenet's bedroom and Burke's bedrooms were on the second floor. And the theory of the family is that the killer was in the house. The killer went to JonBenet's bedroom. He was very familiar with the house because he had been there several times. He used a stun gun on her. He took her to the basement, which is 4 stories away from the parents' bedroom. You can't hear anything from that basement. We did sound tests from it. And he sexually penetrated her.
Okay.
And he used a garrote. Guys, the garrote was embedded in her neck. That's how savage the attack on her
I'm
was.
telling you, it's somebody that knew the house. Had to know the house. It's too big. It's too dark. You just gonna figure out the stairwells and where the rooms are? No, the dude knew the house, been there, knew where the notepads were, and it's got sexual deviance all over this thing. It's such a creepy, sick story. I just hope they eventually catch whoever it is. He deserves to rot in hell.
What is with the house right now? Where's the house now? Is it sold? Is it knocked down? Is it?
You know what? The house, the address has been changed on the house. The front of it looks totally different because trees were planted and have grown, evergreen trees. A family bought the house with friends of the Ramsey family. The Ramsey family was running out of money because they were hiring private detectives to investigate the case, and they were spending all their money to do it. Friends of the Ramsey family bought the house. Then the house sold to somebody else. It's never sold since. So it has been unoccupied for probably 20 years.
Yeah. So it's empty, you're saying? It's just sitting there empty? So I guess
that's creepy.
I guess that is kind of creepy. It's sort of like,
but they take care of it. They make sure that they have security there.
I was going to say that is a thing where people. It's sort of like we had mentioned before by the gravesite tour. That's got to be like, let's go see the Ramsey house. People must go just to the city to see that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
they still do.
It's like,
and it's this monolith to this horrible travesty in so many ways.
Yep. All right, Paula, you did a great job explaining everything. You want to tell everybody, where to get your book and what else you're working on these days?
I'm working on a documentary. It's private at this point because it involves a lot of investigative work.
Okay.
It will be on JonBenet. 2 books, get them on Amazon.
Okay. Yep.
Yep, Paula Woodward. They're good.
Yeah, one is called We Have Your Daughter. That's a great title. The Unsolved Murder of JonBenet Ramsey 20 years later. And the other one is Unsolved, the JonBenet Ramsey Murder 25 years later.
Well,
so
We Have Your Daughter. I think that was in the ransom note. The ransom
Yeah.
note.
yeah, it was the first line, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Let me just tell you one other thing. On the ransom note, no curse words. Never mention her first name.
Yeah.
What?
It's like a template. I mean, what do you?
ransom note.
Yeah.
I mean, when you you hear that they've got specialists at the FBI that they have other people that read the profiler. The profiler, they just like you say that it's just to me it's so interesting to find out how they look at the note, they make their suggestions, and they're pretty good. They're right on a lot of these things.
Yeah, okay.
So I just don't know what the profiler ever said because I wasn't privy to that. And I don't know if they ever did a special on the profiler or what he thought about the ransom note.
Well, we're going to be watching whatever you come up with next. If it's a doc, if it's another book, 30 years later, you have to do another book at 30 years. Maybe there'll be an arrest by then. We'll come to Boulder and celebrate with you.
So.
Okay?
That'd be great.
Paula, a pleasure. Thank you for doing 1 degree of scandalous.
It was awesome to talk to both of you. You both have great experience.
Thank you, Paula. Say hi to our friend Tony Kovaleski in Denver, and thanks again for making some time. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks for joining us.
Christmas.
See you in 2023.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and be right back.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, welcome back. Okay, that wasn't exactly a light interview, and not like maybe talking to the guy that married J-Lo and Ben.
I watched so many specials on JonBenet. I just so I kept forming an opinion. I didn't want to form an opinion. I was thinking, oh God, did the parents what happened? It's even after the interview with Paula, I'm still kind of undecided. But hearing her opinion, I got to go. Maybe she's right. She was right there. I wasn't, so I can't form an opinion. Patsy's died from cancer, and John still is remarried, so he seems like a good guy, and she verifies.
Yeah, she died when she was 49, so she was 39 when this happened. She died in 2006. It's so sick. It's so disgusting. It's so sad that someone's walking around free that got away with this, and you can't get away with anything these days. Nothing. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you get away with these days other than major murders every now and then,
Yeah, it's tough to get away with. Technology. Technology is going to, no one can get away. As they say on those forensic file shows, there's no perfect crime.
It almost, I mean, the only way you could screw this up is if the police screwed it up, she seemed bitter, like ticked off.
Yeah.
Like she's read too much evidence, knows too much about just the incompetence of that Boulder police staff.
I think she's feeling that she did more work than they did. She put more into it, detective work into it.
You know who can solve it, I think? Deion Sanders, new coach of the Colorado Buffaloes.
What? Oh.
He's in Boulder now.
There you go.
I
like the way you segue to sports. It's good. We need that to go segue to sports.
He can take a 1-12 bad football team and turn them into a bowl team next year. Maybe he can solve this case in his prime time. Deion, solve it if you can.
Holy cow.
Okay, we're taping this a couple days before Christmas. Dave, we got your present. It's going to be coming in the new year, okay? All right? It's an Orlando Magic jersey. I don't know. How are they doing? Are they doing okay?
They won 6 in a row. They could have won 7 in a row, but it was a dumb foul at the end, so the Hawks won on 2 free throws.
A meaningless game in December, and it probably kept you up that night, huh?
No, it's just we're almost healthy. We're still missing 5 players, and they should be back hopefully by the New Year's.
All right, good luck. The East, you'll
got the
sneak into the
best record?
playoffs.
We're 2 games out of the playoffs, believe it or not.
Milwaukee's got the best record.
We're 2 games from the playoffs.
Okay, how about this past weekend in sports with the World Cup final and just some of those NFL games and that Raiders game?
Yeah.
Nothing makes me happier than seeing Bill Belichick lose a game like that.
Yeah, I know.
There just can't be enough. It's a
Tom's got a hatred for Bill Belichick. He doesn't bug me.
No, kid, I don't hate him. I can't stand him.
Oh, he's overrated. Yeah.
I just don't like guys like that clearly gravy trained off the back of somebody else, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
It's and won't admit it, and can't just be a little bit humble about it or grateful.
I have to point out, though, your prediction during the beginning of this year was that Brady would not finish the year. I think you're getting it wrong on that. And you go right to the broadcasting booth. You're wrong.
The season's not over.
Well,
hello.
Yeah, he'll finish out.
He probably will.
And you know what? They're the worst team that's in first place. It's amazing.
Well, they're going to be under 500 to make the playoffs.
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, what a great year. We'll have one more show before it's all over. Merry Christmas. First Christmas. Not that there's any pressure, but first Christmas being married. Do you have any outs or anything? Have you done your shopping?
Yeah, I do have an out. She's from China, and they don't have Christmas. So is that an out?
Was
We'll
that a specification when you were looking for a
it's like,
bride?
I go, yes. I go, no, you don't know who Santa is. Please. Santa has never been to Wuhan. Come on.
What can my excuse be? It's 19 years for me.
19.
Do I have an excuse?
No, you always spend Christmas. Who knows? Maybe I'll see you in Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, for
maybe
buying a
Palm
gift for my
Springs.
wife, but you know what? She gets whatever she wants. I mean, she buys it.
Every day's Christmas
It
for
makes
her.
it difficult. What are you supposed to do?
Every day's Christmas. Come on.
Right? All right, Kato, happy holidays.
Happy
Say
holidays,
hello to
brother. Merry
Shangi for me.
Christmas.
Tell
Yeah, I
her
will.
happy Merry Christmas. Maybe I'll see you. Maybe you come over and watch some sports or something.
Love it.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for following us all season long. Make sure you subscribe and follow us every single week.
Yeah, make us happy. Go in 2022. Finish the year by subscribing to YouTube at 1 Degree of Scandalous.
What's your favorite Christmas movie before we go? I'll tell you mine. Die Hard, and I haven't watched it yet. I cannot wait to watch it. Love it.
Mine has to be the Jimmy Stewart, Jeremy. Actually, mine is a Netflix Dahmer special. Best Christmas movie.
Yes, that came out during the
It's a
holidays.
Wonderful Life. Come
All
on.
right, enjoy your families. Have a great Christmas, everybody.
Love
We'll
it.
see you in a week.
Bye.